preparing to live stream the meeting,
Okay.
and we're getting ready. It's starting to go. There we go. Done. We are now
All right.
ready to go.
Hello,
There we go.
Patty.
Good to see you, Leslie.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Okay. Whoops. Wasn't planning on doing that. Okay. Do this. Yes. Do this. Yes. Do this. Oh, I'm on Zoom. Okay. I'm seeing myself on YouTube. Okay. Well, that's good
That sounds
news.
kind of weird.
Okay. Shouldn't happen. I switched screens. I'm back.
Okay.
Okay. I just so you know, I do, if you see a funny face popping in beside me from time to time and leaning in or doing whatever, Lori's over. So she may be commenting if she wishes to or not, but she's just going to be off camera for most of the time.
Okay. Well, hi, Lori.
hello, Lori.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Okay, I'm good. I think I'm good here. I can close this down. I was thinking I'd need my computer, but I can do it off my iPad, which is even better. Yeah, so anyway. So I kept myself in bed most of the day, Patty, just so that you know.
Okay.
And just to make sure I was as prepared as I could be for the BDE tonight.
Well, I'm really excited to have you here because there are some new things that we want to share with people. And I'm very glad to have you here to do it. So
yes, we need to.
And
there's
like Jane.
Awesome.
Yep, got a couple minutes, and I'm sure Brent will be in.
Hey, Leslie.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
Would you be interested in BDE if price wasn't an issue for you?
IBR?
BDE, sorry, IBC.
IBC.
Yeah.
Let me think about it. I really appreciate the offer. I turn 69 tomorrow.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm older than you are. I'm older
Yes.
than you are.
Yes, by about 4 months, I remember it. You're in April.
No, I'm in February.
Oh, February.
Yeah.
Oh, you're really old.
Yeah. I am. I'm popping in there. That's okay.
Trudy is actually retiring. She's 70. She's actually going to be retiring in August.
Nice.
So things changed a little bit for us, and we don't know. We haven't had time to figure out what that looks like.
I hear you loud and clear.
So
no worries.
I really appreciate it, and I will give it some serious consideration.
Okay.
Welcome, Brent. Glad you're here.
Hello, Brent.
And hi. Jane.
And hello, Jane.
Welcome. So it is 9 o'clock. Blair, do you want to get started, or do we want to give it a few more minutes?
Let's give it a few more minutes. I mean, we normally start when Brent shows up. So
Well, he's here,
but
so just
he
ask
is, we can officially start. But yeah, I would like to continue this. See if we can get one or two more. We'll give it a couple more minutes.
Okay.
So, Brent, how are you?
I'm doing all right. My back is acting up again, so I may be in and out to take a rest and sit down a little bit or that. So I'll still be listening, but the camera just so I'm maybe in and out of the picture. But yeah.
Okay, no
Other than
worries.
that, doing well.
By the way, I have you guys all up on my big screen TV. I'm not in my office. I'm here in my living room on my couch. And just taking care of myself, mostly my butt, actually. So just lots of issues. So anyway, gotta have something comfortable. So anyway, I rested up all day. So yeah, I mentioned it to Leslie, but I should maybe fill people in briefly once we get started here.
So is that everything still okay for the IBC?
It is. It's 100%. Yeah, like because I've tested it out a couple different ways. I worked for a good half day, a little longer today. Actually, I tested it out, or actually, if everything goes to hell in a handbag, I can still work from my bed, and that's what I worked from today all morning, like from 9:30 on till 1 o'clock. So yeah. Anyway,
All right.
so I'm good to work from there if I have to. But this seems to be I'm totally comfortable here. So right now, so that's even better. So yeah, so my camera is right here in front of me, but I look there to see a big picture of you guys. So anyway, let's get started anyway.
Okay.
Oh,
All righty.
yep. Do you want to kick it off here, Patty?
Yep, we give it a 3, 2, 1 for Jane's editing purposes here, and then I'll start the introduction. So welcome to the 304th episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience. My name is Patty. I'm your co-host tonight. Blair is your host. He is the creator of my models. And let's see, he has tested and applied my models in a wide variety of circumstances for both mental health and in business with over 80% success. And he is responsible for coaching businesses toward millions and billions of income. Let's see. The Blair Dunkley Experience is his gift to you. We don't charge for this experience. What he teaches has phenomenal value. It is absolutely life-changing. For me, it broke a series of about 10 years of depression that I was unable to medicate myself out of. I have been medication-free and have not experienced depression for over 6 years now after working with Blair and learning the mind models that he's talking about. So what are mind models? Mind models are thought frameworks that teach us how to think and not what to think. So that's what we're going to get into tonight. We're doing a series on navigating acute and chronic stress. This will be the second session on sources of stress, but we're looking to discover how to manage yourself in a stressful world with mind models. So that's where we're going to start. Blair, shall we go into the review, or did you want to give people an update on your health?
Sure, I can give people a quick update here. So I missed last week. One of the side effects of the, well, proctitis, not exactly, but of radiation on the prostate is that you can get an abscess. And so, I was just talking to, well, actually it was Patty and also Lori, that I think I'm having almost every possible side effect that you can have from this. Like, I don't think I'm missing one that I know of. Anyway, so this abscess was huge, and it's sort of comes out more or less between your body parts, between your legs, and it's like huge in nature. When removing the packing that was in there, it was about 3 feet long of packing, and it just was, that's a lot of packing. So it was bizarre and weird. Just, that's what they put in to let it drain and keep it doing whatever it needs to do. So it's close to healed, but it hasn't completely healed yet. But I'm good enough to be on the BDE tonight because I miss being here, guys. I really do. I miss this a lot. So thank you for showing up in spite of the fact that I'm not here and learning whatever. And Lori's doing her best to show, well, not Lori, but Patty is doing her best to show up and do whatever. So it's thank you, Patty.
You are welcome.
Okay, with that said, that's my update.
So,
I am feeling back actually mentally and physically. Other than that, I'm feeling a whole lot better generally.
well, we're
So,
excited
I'm on
to
the
do
mend.
that. We wish you all the best every week and are always excited when you're able to be here to join us. So just a quick recap, especially for people who are starting with this episode and not going back to the other one. Sources of acute and chronic stress. We dealt more with acute stress last week, especially stress that has ongoing life-changing implications. But when we looked at the question, what is stress? Brent brought up a really interesting point that I was so excited that you brought up, Brent. It was really excellent. The fact that stress can be effective in our lives, not just ineffective. We're so used to thinking about stress as this really negative thing. Oh, I've got stress. Well, the only people who don't have stress are dead, buried, gone. Everybody else has stress. So a certain amount of stress is necessary for us to retain both physical and emotional strength and adaptability. So without those things, we don't continue to grow without certain stressors. So thank you, Brent, for that particular addition to things, which is one I hadn't thought of at the time when we did this last week. So we do have a need for stress. We can atrophy physically or mentally without it. It causes us to look at ourselves. We don't do much self-evaluation unless we're a little bit uncomfortable. So stress can cause us to self-evaluate based on being uncomfortable. And sometimes stress can reveal something that, for lack of a better expression, is cognitive dissonance. So it's the difference between what you think you know or believe and what is real right in front of you. And so it can reveal those things and expose a gap that we can then examine, self-evaluate, and close. So the key to stress being effective or ineffective in our lives is our ability to cope. And my models help us cope with stress. So we looked at acute and episodic, acute and chronic stress. We also asked where you feel stress in your body. And Tim and Becky were here with us last week about their book, Swept Away, which is a book about grieving and acceptance. If you haven't seen it or read it, it's worth getting a hold of. They lost their 2 daughters in a tragic flash flood about 4 years ago. So Tim introduced something that I'm calling, it's all me, he doesn't call this himself, but I call it Tim's mini stack, which is control versus influence, self-other situation, and situation people process. For those of you new to mind models, what I just listed are all names of specific mind models. And Blair's going to go over more about how do we use those mind models to help us navigate stress. So especially the situation people process on how to navigate these. And he added the 3 Ps of questioning with a focus on the self, other, situation, and situation, people, process. So Blair, would you like to fill us all in?
Sure, love to. So, and hey, Jackie, welcome back.
Yes, welcome,
so-
Jackie.
Yep. So anyway, people so much of what we do here is we think, we behave, we do things in terms of habits. We create these habits to speed up thinking, to take mental shortcuts, and they generally work well for us, but sometimes they don't. So they create these hiccups in our lives, but they're great ways to cope with life, with what's going on. And there are pathways that we use in our mind, whether or not you have named and labeled them or not. And what I did is I just noticed how people use these habituated pathways, and people use the same models, the same ideas over and over and over again in similar situations. And that's where, by the way, that's where mind models came from. But most people don't name those habituated pathways, pardon me. And that naming and labeling of that habituated pathway is an excellent shortcut to be able to identify what you're doing, make it repeatable, and then make it transferable or duplicatable to others. So identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable is really what it comes down to with the mind models. And that's where I jump into the idea of situation, people, process. Now, that mind model in particular, situation, people, process, came about as a result of me just in group at Life Skills College. I was there for actively coaching for 12, 15 years, something like that. And I was with the college for 35 years. But the bottom line is I got to identify these behaviors, the way people would introduce a problem, a situation, talk about their life or whatever, tended to have these patterns that repeated. And if somebody is venting off or frustrated or stuck in a model or stuck in themselves, they usually talk about the situation they find themselves in. Then they talk about the people. So, and if they're blaming, if they're in a why, they're going to blame the situation and or the people in that scenario. Now, the whole critical piece here is we do need to identify the situation. We need to identify the people, but the person that you can control is, so who can you control? You can only control yourself, right? So, yeah. So if you can only control yourself, yet you're trying to pin the problem on somebody else, well, is it really theirs or is it really yours? Unless you're trying to take away a problem from somebody else, it's actually theirs. And the way that I ask this question simply is this: who owns the problem? And the answer to that is the person who can actually make the change happen is the person that owns the problem. Okay, so, if I was having a debate with my mother, let's say, and she's trying to do one thing and I wanted to do something else, well, who owns that problem? I'm wanting her to do something else, but she's fine doing it her own way. Well, I'm owning the problem because, pardon me, I'm trying to change her. But what I haven't done is I haven't defined a process. So remember, it's situation, people, process. And if I'm not the person who actually has the process, or if I am the person who needs to change his process, I need to make the change rather than getting my mother to try and change. So you get that, guys? Have I made that relatively clear? Leslie, you're nodding yes. Okay.
So
Brett?
Blair, you're talking about the process being identifying who owns the problem. Isn't there something beyond that?
There is. Then you've got to build out actually the thing that is the process to resolve it. And basically, when you own who owns the problem, then you generally have to figure out, am I defining the problem reasonably well? Like, what's the problem? And then what's an action plan to overcome that? And then enact the action plan. So it's basically, honestly, it's the success formula at that point, which is who, what, how. So, and we're also going to use the 3 E's later on in this as well. So all of these mind models start weaving a nice little tapestry on how to live life. And when you know these things, you can go, oh, am I evaluating this? Well, what comes before evaluating? Is it externally verifiable? Yeah, it is. And what comes before that? Is what I'm doing effective or ineffective? Well, when I'm trying to make my mother change and she doesn't want to, how effective is that? It's ineffective. So if it's effective, then I can change myself. That's effective. And then I can go to something, is that externally verifiable? Well, yeah, if I change my behavior, that's externally verifiable. And lastly, can I evaluate whether or not it's effective or not? What I do? Well, I can after I give it a go. So I just try something on, see how it works, and then I evaluate. How well did that work? What worked, what didn't work, and what's one thing I might change? Anyway, that's the quick piece. Well, it's not that quick, but it's fairly dense with mind models here. Situation, people, process. And when you take a look at that, if you just realize everything, wherever you make a change in your life, 100% of the time has to have a process. Otherwise, no change happens. So that's the key takeaway.
Yeah. Was there something? No.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So that's that. Questions?
Do the 3 P's of questioning play into that at all?
Absolutely. I was going to save that for just a little bit, but
Okay.
right
That's
after
fine. We
this,
can
but
cover it later. If it makes more sense to you to cover it later.
not
we can do
necessarily.
that.
I wanted to tie the 3 P's of questioning into self-other situation as well. So, and then how self-other situation can play into the situation people process.
Would that work with the illustration you have about when your father went to surgery?
Yes, it does actually really well. Okay. Years ago, my father went in for open heart surgery. And unfortunately, 15 minutes before he got off the ward of the intensive care, he, for some reason, stopped breathing, and the doctors injected him with a drug to paralyze him, everything but his heart. So they could act, because they said that he was fighting intubation. In other words, they wasn't letting him ventilate himself or breathe. They wanted to take over breathing for him. And he was fighting it. So long story short is that whole piece of it was a big hit to myself and my family at the time. And I was a young coach, and I'd become a life skills coach at the time. I was in my 20s, and I'd also just finished a course on mindset because I was feeling that their life skills was extremely good. I've got no qualms about that, but I'm always was looking to improve.
May I interrupt you for just a moment?
Yes.
Just to clarify for the people listening, his father went in for open heart surgery. They did medicate him. He was fighting the breathing tube, but he did not ever wake up. Okay, he never woke up.
No, he was
after that.
actually awake.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, he was awake prior to them inducing a coma.
Right, but once they induced a coma in him, he did not wake up after that.
He got from a pure coma state into what's referred to as a locked-in state.
Okay.
So his eyes were now open. He could sort of move his head indiscriminately, but he could not control his body. He could not control his breathing. He could not talk. He could not do anything at all. And he was in that state for 14 years before he passed. He never came out of that.
And you
So-
were in your early 20s at that point, weren't you?
I was in my mid-20s, actually.
Mid-20s. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted people to get a better understanding of what it is you were facing. And you were a mindset coach, which was your first fallback in dealing
Well,
with.
technically, I was a life skills coach using mindset.
Okay. Life skills
Okay.
coach using mindset. All right. Keep going.
Yeah, I thought that mindset was the thing I needed to boost life skills in some areas. But I didn't do a lot of, I did mostly life skills, but I tried in basic job readiness training to teach more of the mindset because it felt more businessy at the time. Long story short here, I kept on getting stories back from my students that they couldn't make their mindset work even after they learned the lesson. And I had a pretty good mindset at the time. In fact, I thought mindset was pretty much unshakable. So I was in my mid to late 20s, actually, when my dad went into the coma. And I think I was 28 when my dad went into the coma. And at the end of the day here, 2 weeks after my dad went into the coma, the doctor pulled our whole family together and told us, your dad has a 99% chance of never coming out of this coma. So he's got a 1% chance of coming out. That was it, at best. 99% chance of being in there for the rest of his life. So I was crushed. I went home that evening and basically had a meltdown in the shower. I was uncontrollably crying, and I dragged myself out of the shower after the shower turned cold and I was still crying, sort of convulsively crying, and pulled a towel over me. And the next thing that I clearly remember was I'd made an appointment to see my mindset trainer. And I put myself through about an hour and a half worth of exercises that other people had put them, that I was trained to do for other people, and I put myself through it. She put me through the same ones. And at the end of the day, she said this to me. I told her it didn't work. And she said to me, Blair, you're just not believing enough. Like, it's my fault. It's like, you just don't believe enough in mindset. And that freaked me out. I gave her the bird and told her, F you, and left and never saw her again, because I knew that wasn't effective. Because at Life Skills College, 80% of our student population was generally, depending on the group, but generally potentially suicidal. So you can't tell people that it's their fault that life isn't working out and have them survive. So that's not an appropriate response or behavior. So at the end of the day, that's actually where I started to figure out that I needed to find these things. They were initially called points clarity, but over time they morphed into mind models. But I needed to look for these models, actually, is what I was looking for. And I had that right from the start, is thinking about there's got to be these ways, these models, these ideas that are identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable, that I can actually work through this stuff. And that was, I'd already stumbled across the idea of question concepts at the day during that time, and belief systems, but also this thing of situation, people, and process. And that mindset trainer put me through a series of actions, which was supposed to be a process to modify my situation and how I thought, but it didn't work. So the process was flawed. So what she did is went back, and instead of saying, oh, we have a faulty process here, we need to change it, she went back to the person, me, and blamed me for it not working. That happens so freaking common in so many areas of life. A person will blame somebody else when they are the party that's responsible. They did the thing that caused the problem, but they don't want to accept the problem. They want to reflect that and deflect that onto a person, the other parties or party involved. And it's a normal defensive technique, but it's not a healthy technique because you can't change it at the end of the day. So the way that you shift this around is you shift it around with what we say is self, other, and situation, which is close to situation, people, process. But self, other, situation is this. I don't have my normal computer here, so I'm not going to try and do this, but I usually, hey, Jane.
Jane, do you have the self-other situation diagram that you could put up in the chat?
That would be wonderful.
Thank you.
So,
Jane.
yeah. So when we've got that diagram up, and it's basically 3 circles overlapping. One circle is self, one circle is others, and one circle is the situation. Perfect. It came up, yes. And if you look in the notes right now or in the chat, it's there with the overlap in the middle. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
I was going to say, Jane, you've got these labeled. Yeah, thank you. That first diagram is not ours, not the one we want. There it is.
Okay.
Okay, self-other situation with the sweet spot in the middle, she's got highlighted.
Thank you. Yep. So basically, self-other situation, it's that sweet spot of everything overlapping, where self must be included in that sweet spot. You have to be able to disassociate from the emotion of it, as that if you are the party that you feel hurt, harmed, or whatever, you have to move away and be able to get to sort of a bit of a dispassionate place that's not dominated by emotion, but includes emotion. So it's a weird balance here. And that self-other, and that takes you into generating that self and other blending. Once you get that blend, you start forming a new situation through discussion, which is the process in situation, people, and process. So that blend of those two is excellent. And I strongly recommend that people ask questions at that time. And I have another mind model called the 3 P's of questioning. The 3 P's of questioning, the first P is we want to prove to whatever that we're correct. So we question, isn't that right? Aren't I right? You know, so like, isn't that like you make the evidence yours, so you try and prove yourself correct. And then you go and say something like, do you see that this works in this situation? Can't you see that? That's from proving to positioning yourself as the correct party. Okay? But those two don't work. You can intimidate your way into there, and a lot of people try, but it's by proving and positioning questions. But the one that really works, the one that has all the power in it, is the third P, which goes back to process. So situation, people process self-other situation. When you get into that thing, it builds a process. And now 3 P's of questioning is the third one here is prove, position, and process. So all of a sudden we've got a process again. So process requires you to be curious. And once you start getting curious and ask curiosity-based questions to somebody else, you can start understanding a process rather than making assumptions.
Blair, Leslie had a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, Leslie.
I thought Leslie had a question. Does process include empathy then with self, other, and situation?
You know what? The process, when you get into that dispassionate place, Leslie, you become empathetic, but it builds understanding for sure. I wouldn't say that you're guaranteed to get to empathy, but definitely not sympathy, but definitely understanding, where you can understand the other person's position. Sometimes you can even get that understanding to the point of empathizing with them, that you can recognize them as having a difficult spot because you're understanding their emotions.
Blair,
and if you can't,
is empathy necessarily the most appropriate label there? Would compassion work as opposed to empathy?
Compassion is far more effective in that scenario than pure empathy.
Okay.
Okay, so you can be compassionate towards somebody's.
Welcome, Matt.
Yeah, hey Matt. You can be compassionate towards somebody's position, but and then work towards understanding with a compassionate understanding. So that's where the best play is.
And even toward being compassionate toward yourself. I think
you have to have self-compassion.
Yes, we skip that part sometimes.
We absolutely do. But the other thing here is we sometimes, when we go away and we've had an argument or whatever, and we go away, it becomes this argument where we're using the 3 P's, the 2 out of the 3 P's on ourselves. And we're really proving and positioning, like we want to position ourselves so we can prove ourselves right. I'm right. And you got to watch those words, right, wrong, good, or bad. That's when you learn the mind models, right, wrong, good, or bad is all in judgmental language. That's how come we use in the 3 E's, we use effective versus ineffective, or that works or that doesn't work, not good, bad, right, or wrong. And so, a lot of times I've talked to lots of people who've been just trying to prove themselves right. And then I hear them back in the day at Life Skills. I would ask them, so I hear that you're really working hard to prove yourself right. No, 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 I am right. Oh, okay. So how effective is that for you right now? Well, it's very effective, I think. Sort of very effective. Well, not really. And then I just simply ask, are you getting what you truly want? And the answer, when you're trying to prove something to you, the answer is almost 100% of the time, no, I'm not getting what I want. So you got to watch out for that self-con. You do this to yourself because you want to hold yourself as right. You don't want to see yourself as having made a mistake. But the further along you get, and the more and the quicker you can work through that, you're okay with this. That self-con goes away very quickly. And what you build in its place is a process where you're able to, move through a scenario and get yourself to get beyond where you currently are. And that's a big deal. Okay?
All right, Jane, do you have that link to this article regarding mindset? There was a study done. There was a study done on mindset theory to see how effective was it. And Blair, it was less than 1% effective. There it is.
The best they could show in 6 different areas, one area had a statistically significant 1% increase. That's it. Now, in other areas, you're running the same tests. In other areas, the worst area had a negative 12%. So mindset can hold you back from success and growth by as much as 12%. And the best that it can do is increase yourself by 1%. So, every mind model that I've developed here was tested to have an efficacy. In other words, it worked after you learned it effectively and you apply it the first time, it would work 80% of the time the first time you used it. Now, doesn't mean that it's 100%. It's not. Nothing is 100%, but it does work 80% of the time, which means that it's 8,000 times more effective than mindset. So I'd suggest you use mind models rather than trying to build your mindset. Use mind models. And you know what? If mindset is a belief system, and it is, what you'll do is you have a more reliable model to build that belief system, because belief systems are actually built into mind models. That's one of the mind models, is belief systems. So you can then make that model how to identify, repeat, and duplicate. When you identify what it is that you're doing, make it repeatable, and then duplicate it over and over again, getting similar results in yourself and others, you can take control of your life. I mean, Patty mentioned that earlier here, in terms of what she did with her depression.
Mm-hmm.
You literally take charge of your mind. So
yeah, it really was so ineffective for, because I went to counselors and they would try and tell me where my thinking was wrong and what I should be thinking. And again, made it my fault that I didn't get better. But you hear in just what I've said, the right, wrong, good, bad, should thing, I'm a unique human being. They cannot crawl inside my skin and find the way that is most effective for me to think. But I can discover that. using my models. And when I started working with Blair, part of it was, okay, is this working for you? I'm like, no, it's not. Okay, what about it isn't working? And I was like, wait a minute. Those are questions that I never asked myself. And when I was able to identify and name and label what wasn't working, and then realize that I had choices, I could make choices. And
Yeah.
the power that gave me and still gives me, because I lead a challenging life. And within that challenging life, I am shifting my priorities. I'm shifting, so many things, many times in a day to make just to make my life work. But
Yep.
I am not in the mud. I am not in the weeds. I am not in the hole. I am continuing to be effective regardless of the fact that life is really very challenging right now. So, Blair is talking about an acute event with his dad that ended up being a chronic stressor, and it led him to, that stress made him more effective. It really was part of what actually birthed my models, was his looking for a way to be effective in the middle of an overwhelming stress and life change. Tim and Becky last week, same thing, overwhelming life change. And they were, they used my models to become more effective within that. A different kind of stress that I'd like to shift us to is episodic stress. Now, stress that comes with an acute nature to it, but comes and goes. And so first responders frequently experience something like this. People work in the emergency room, or, the policeman or fireman, any of those type of people, ambulance workers, they're going to experience that surge, of adrenaline that comes with that acute stress. But pain is another one that can come and go. Blair, I want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to see, can you guys identify an episode where you were stressed in your life like that? Jane, does that make sense to you?
Every time we move, going through cancer treatment, having a child be diagnosed with a lifelong disease, those were episodes, but they are not continual chronic. They don't continue chronically on. And it's not just a moment. This is going to last for a period of time.
Exactly. They don't go away quickly.
No,
Yep.
Leslie, you looked like you might resonate with some of that too.
I do. This purchase of equipment that did not work, and getting it to the point where it is almost settled.
Yay!
Almost.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you'll get for your birthday. What do you think?
I would be blessed. It would bring an end to that episode.
Yes.
Of enormous stress.
So, Matt, can you relate to any?
By the way, just before you go there, but do you notice the process that you used this time in identifying, because you identified a situation on previous episodes, you've identified the people involved on previous episodes, and you've actually defined a process that you used to address this, and found a party within there that would engage in conversation or in email conversation, whatever that is, with you regarding a process.
Yes.
Do you see that? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay, people, situation, process.
My hang on. My video card seems to be acting up. It seems to just stall. Sorry. But yes, I do. And certainly in these things, I've there have been several emails that have gone back and forth, of course.
Yes.
And I find that writing it with all the emotion that I could possibly pile into a paragraph, but not send it, gets rid of that emotion, and then working it down to be clear and concise and articulating the reality. It pushes away that.
Exactly. Did you remember when I talked earlier about that dispassionate space? When you get into there, you convey the emotion without driving the emotion. It's still in there, I bet. But
Yeah, but
you're
not as
now in a
certainly not as severe.
correct, because you're not blaming the other person. You're expressing the concern that the product was unable to perform, how was not able to actually do it. And that is always a concern and should be a concern for them.
I heard him go into the logical part, going into here is what, and making a list.
Yep.
And that gives him that is what helps dissipate that emotion, because he's pushing into that prefrontal cortex instead of sitting back there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But it's all about building a process. And remember when I said the process is built with who, what, how. And so who is you. Yep. In this case, what happened, the history of it, like the historical what, and then the action plan, what you'd like to get accomplished. And the how is going to fall out of this as they get ready to act. And you've taken your action by sending the email and continuing to remind and support and do whatever it is that you do. And then the odds, in my opinion, go up, so long as it doesn't go over the top with emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Well
Agreed.
done.
Thank you.
Another piece, Leslie, of what I noticed in what you were saying is that by writing it down, you externalized what was inside so that you could then evaluate that, as opposed to circling around inside of you. So by writing it down and being able to read it, that's externalizing that and allowing you to then become effective as your own advocate.
Yes.
Yes.
Very true.
Thank you.
So Matt, have you experienced anything with episodic stress, and how do you manage it?
Oh, I sure have. I've had kind of quite a few years, over 13 years of having a couple different strokes. Had some major disabilities from that. So it was kind of just learning at times of, at first, when you first kind of have it happen, you don't realize what's going on, and you put a lot of stress on yourself, a lot of stress on the people around you and stuff like that. But for me, it was kind of once I got some answers, knew that things are going to be okay. Along with that, and came a bad back injury in the midst of all of that, which both have sidelined me quite significantly. But I'm also listening to an audiobook too that's kind of tying this all together a little bit more for me too, but it's also taking extreme ownership of knowing that I have these things. I can only control what I feel and what pain I'm going through and mental stresses I'm going through, and I'm the only one that can change that. And once I grasped that concept, and it took a lot of years without any help, I finally realized that if I just accept, but be aware that I'm willing to accept, notice that I have these problems, and then address them and take extreme ownership, I can take a deep breath and be okay with what I got going on.
Yeah.
So it's been a long journey. I mean, all this started back as far as 2006, and then some more heavily things in 2018 and 19. So it's compiled over quite a few years, but I've learned to deal with it. Like I say, it came to the point of just being around some of you guys, having Zach, having a few of those things. I've just kind of also just realized that, you know, there's ways of mentally dealing with it and being able to accept what we have been dealt. But I also feel I'm a big believer of we are only dealt it if we can actually handle it. And taking extreme ownership for that also helps take the right step and cross that line in the sand and take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well done.
Mm-hmm.
So, Matt, with self-other and situation, was there ever a time with that many health issues, which are really significant? Was there a time when you felt like you were your health issues as opposed to your health issues being your situation? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. If you especially I can relate a little bit more to the back injury because the pain was always reminding me.
Yeah.
So you kind of start to have a little bit of a better day or stuff where you kind of learn how to deal, and then all of a sudden something happens and it just increases your pain levels by 50, 60, 70% on top of what is already 60, 70, 80%. It reminds you quickly and it easily pulls you back into blaming things, not actually focusing on the mental state. Physical
Right.
pain is one thing, but the mental state can definitely add to it. Is something I've learned, but just again, it's just accepted. A Nanpu comes to mind for me with all this. It's just being aware, noticing, and being aware of noticing and continuing on
Yes.
the process. Um, I'm still learning all those things, but those things have helped me since I first started these calls, about 2 months ago. So I'm slowly programming myself and getting it all to come forefront and use the tools that you guys have been providing.
Well done, Matt. We're seriously
Yes.
very well.
Well done. And
Now,
we're
I can personally
appreciative
relate
that you're
to,
here.
sorry,
I was just going to say, I really appreciate Matt showing up and
yeah,
continuing to use us as part of his learning process.
I like being here.
I
So
really
Blair, you were going
related.
to share. You can
Yeah,
relate to
really.
this one, can't you?
Oh God, yeah, because like the pain of things, and when things just start getting a little bit better, and then something happens and you get pulled back into it. But that's really, again, where choice and how your mental state, you know, and how, for me, it's all, I mean, I used to be a huge believer in attitude is everything, except when I ran out of, well, I don't know how to manufacture this attitude right now.
Yes.
Like, how do I get back my attitude? But when I have the mind models, I love the fact that you went through an ANPU. I love the fact, like you referred to it as extreme responsibility. I don't quite buy into the extremeness of it. I buy into it is responsibility. You got to take responsibility. Absolutely. But I find it less pressure for me to take full responsibility when I have the mind models to know how to take responsibility and how to focus my mind to get out of my pain. What can I do next? And know that rather than why am I here? And okay, occasionally in this process, which has been going on off and on for most of 6 months now, almost a year, actually, when I think about it, it doesn't feel that bad. When I think about the length of time that it's actually been going on, it feels worse. So for me, chunking it down into individual events or segments or whatever, and mentally knowing that I can manage my way out of it and reduce a lot of my pain myself by staying in the present as best I can. And sometimes the pain hurts like hell in the present, but it's what do I focus on other than the pain at that moment?
So Blair, how does focusing on time? We had talked about focus on time with reference to, past, present, future,
Yeah.
in managing this kind of pain.
If I stay in the past and project that pain into the future, it goes very dark, very, very fast.
It
Like,
snowballs.
Sorry?
It snowballs.
God, that's an understatement. It's a freaking avalanche.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the point of living, sort of thing. Like, I can't cope with this because I can't do anything and whatnot. But when I chunk it down into the individual things of saying, okay, I need the day, I need the hour, I need this minute. And if it's the day and I can get through the day, then I can get through tomorrow. I can look forward to the end of the week and get through that. And then a week into next week and next week into the end of the month and go on from there by looking forward. But I can only do that if I can get myself into the present. I can't see where you position yourself in your life. If you're in the present looking towards your past and you get drawn into your past, you're screwed.
But it also, the pain can make you think about the future and you focus on more of what could be coming instead of focusing in the present.
Exactly. And more pain and more this and more that, because you're focused on what you saw in the past amplifies in the future. I don't know about you, Matt, but that's what happened to me.
You physically feel it. There's physical pain and emotional pain. And when you physically feel it, that's where I said the snowball effect comes into play, because then all of a sudden it becomes emotional pain and then they start feeding off each other. And if you can't separate the two in your brain and separate those two, it starts to snowball and it starts to get to the point of, what am I going to do? Is this going to be any good? Am I going to be able to do the things I used to be able to do? And you start to think, well, no, but when you start thinking about what the blessings are behind it, because we have been given these cards that we are meant to deal with, how do we deal with it in the present? And then also now take that and realize that we still got a gift. We're still walking on 2 feet. We still got a heartbeat. We still got all those kind of things. But I can tell you a little eye opener for me is my strokes were visual. They weren't motor functions. I went 100% blind.
Wow.
When I'm lying in the hospital bed, and it was at the time of my first kid being born, and she was just over a year old, and I was worried I never was going to be able to see my family again.
Right.
When my vision came back and I started to be able to see and be where I'm at now, that just it brings it all to perspective, and realizing that you just really do have to live in the present, because as soon as you do, some of the hardships, and especially the emotional hardships, physical pain is one thing, but if you can accept the emotional side and just work with what's in the present, you can 100% start to manage things. Doesn't mean the pain goes away. The physical pain doesn't go away, but you can start to accept the way that your life is, and roll with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you for
absolutely.
sharing.
Yep.
Yes,
Now-
Jane put Blair's quote in the, I want to focus on your quote for a minute, Blair.
Go for it.
Jane put it in the chat. So long as you live, you haven't lost. And that's what Matt was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So long as you live, you haven't lost.
The other
So-
side of this that I also wanted to talk about here briefly was the idea of remembered pain.
Okay.
So stress when we get into remembered pain in particular, or difficult times, or whatever, stress, remembered stress, we can manufacture by reliving that scenario, as opposed to remembering it as an event. All of a sudden we can remember it and it doesn't hurt. But when I relive it, I go through all of the emotions, and it's, you know what, for a while before I learned the mind model personally myself, remembering versus, or reliving versus remembering, when you relive something and it tends to be like a fish story where it was this big, then it was this big, and then it tends to get worse over time. And it feels worse over time. So, but if you hold yourself in the moment and just remember it, the story doesn't tend to get exaggerated. It tends to be stated as, this is what happened. Because you're not loading the emotion, you're not living in your why, you're not dramatizing it to make it more real to you, so that you can, and that's the part that I understand now about when people relive, when I relived, situations, what I have to do to cause the emotion to be generated in there was amplify the emotion, because time had a way of reducing down the emotion, but then I had to dramatize the emotion. So I felt like I really got hurt by that, and you didn't have the right to do that. Like I would amp it up and I would relive it rather than remember it. And that is huge for reducing stress. I can talk about my dad in a remembered state, just remembering it, and I'm fine. And I can give all the details. And when I tried as a demonstration one time, I've done it way more than once. I go back into the emotion of my dad being in the coma, the doctor telling us, me going downstairs into the shower, having the shower, collapsing into the corner, and doing my convulsive crying. If I go into that part of it, I'm on the edge of it right now. I can feel tears starting to well up in my eyes just doing that. It's just getting on the edge of reliving it. I really don't need to do that right now. I've got enough that I'm going through right now. Thank you very much. So I'm not going to demonstrate that for you. But the bottom line here is that is a completely doable scenario where you wind up reliving it and feeling those feelings as though they're here and now, and they're not. And that just amplifies everything. And it amplifies stress, by the way. And by the way, when you're using proving and positioning, that's one of the techniques that people use when they prove and position, is they relive it. And they say, see, you hurt me that much. Or see, that situation was that bad because I'm here now, still suffering. Well, yeah, they are, because they're choosing to. And I've heard, I'm not choosing to this, that, and the other thing. Well, every second of the day, are you in that? Yes, I am, really. So at lunchtime, how was lunch? Oh, it was good. Like whatever. So you were there all the time? No. Like it's not 100% of the time, but people torture themselves unnecessary. The other thing that I wanted to mention was remembered stress, remembered pain, remembered fear, especially pain. Most of the pain in my life is remembered. Okay, as I shared earlier, I had a significant abscess in my butt that's now out but not gone. And it's just healing. For quite a while, I could not sit down anywhere close to normally at all. Now, as it got better, sometimes hours in the day, I can remember me on 3 separate occasions this past week, climbing into my bed, protecting my butt so that I didn't hurt myself climbing into the bed. The first time I needed to do that. The next time, actually, I did that 3 times. And then the 4th time, I said, have you bothered to test to see if it still hurts? Because I was anticipating the pain. And when I tested it, I went, no, it doesn't. So I could change the way that I got back into bed. You know, rather than throwing up my knee, falling over on my side and doing everything else, I could actually sit on one cheek and spin into bed. And now I can almost sit down totally fine without much pain. So I'm getting into bed normally again. But a lot of people who are recovering from chronic pain maintain the model that caused them to feel safe back in that model rather than testing to see if it actually still hurts. So your brain doesn't hold on to that pain too long, because you can train yourself to have physical pain that is no longer actually triggered by the body, it's triggered by the brain. Okay. Yeah, I met this guy who did, I don't know, 8-10 years of research on this. It was amazing. Amazing discussion. How we trick ourselves into holding on to pain.
That's
I've
fascinating.
been told after 2 years, your brain will almost to the point fully retrain yourself on pain. And if you don't reset those receptors after 2 years or before the 2-year mark, it almost gets to the point of being irreversible.
It's not, but it's a hell of a lot of work.
Oh yeah. And
Like
especially
you
as
have
you get
to
older, and especially if you have some like even brain injuries, you have things like that. There's just certain things that you just, and again, that's where just being aware and noticing and just taking ownership to knowing that that is just at times you can start to not deal with it, but you can work with it, and you can start to create tools for yourself that can help you day to day and create better habits.
Absolutely. Years ago, I was working out in BC, and one of our people that we trained up about 3 or 4 years prior with mind models and operant effectual counseling, one of the other programs I created using mind models. What happened was he had a stroke, and he could half his body. He had slurred speech, and half of his body he couldn't use. And they said, you've got too much brain damage. This is the way that it's always going to be. And he'd read the book, The Woman or the Person with Half a Brain. It was about a person who did that. He knew that it was you could retrain. And he used question concepts and a lot of the other mind models to literally question himself through what he could and could not do, and kept on trying. And in literally 2 years of daily practice, doing this on and on and on, and applying the mind models to his physical body, and noticing, like the 3-2-1 is a mind model that we use. It's a feedback model. 3 things that you did effectively, 2 things that didn't work, and 1 thing that you can change. He used that model multiple times a day to find that 1 thing that he wanted to change. Now, you can change 1 thing. One of the 3 things that worked, you can do more work on the thing that worked. Okay, that's the thing that you could change, improve that thing. You could do one of the things that didn't work. You could try and fix one of those things. Or you can find something completely different to work on, to fix, or to change, or to improve on, or to do whatever. But it's just change. And these ideas, these simple little ideas, cause them to reverse the functionality of the stroke. He didn't reverse the stroke, but he had a very low droop in his face, and he walked normally without a cane, without anything. It was
Yeah, it takes
amazing.
a lot of intention.
That's right. And I go, that was amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Now,
It really is.
he also had a wife that was a physiotherapist, and his thing that he argued with me, or sorry, he didn't argue with me. He argued with her that him asking questions in his brain and answering them and doing the how of it would change, would rewire his mind. And she said, I've never heard of this before. And he said, will you work with me? Will you make sure I don't fall? Of course, like the answer was yes, but you know, that's the thing. So he had the support, but he also had the methodology to change how he thinks. Rewire his brain, literally. That's how come it's called rewiring the mind.
Yeah. Brent, we haven't heard from you tonight. What are your thoughts?
I mean, thoughts on the stress piece. I was had a thing in there. I was trying to put the two Blair stories and you know, really relate to the stress piece, and then this is where you're kind of tied in, you know, seeing getting to the process and understanding, you know, and the using of the success model, and then actually doing things, and then using that, getting to the present, so that able to deal with the stress and work your way through it effectively, and
Yep.
Moving forward. So that was something I was working on and was going to chime in there, but ended up getting to what I was looking for on how that, you know, tie the two together as the example, but point out like how that's been working, how that was working for the stress piece, and then getting to the chronic piece as well, how that, like the brain, the body, how that works, and how you can keep it coming back. You know, that chronic issue, like reliving, will keep that there. That episodic piece here as well, that will keep that as well. If you keep getting back to the same things, reliving it, those emotions will bring the same thing up over and over, and then making it worse. So, and that will affect the body as well. So, but I was thinking, Patty, you were, it was about the episodic, was like how we, you know, experiencing those things is like, you know, the extremes with like police and fire and EMS is like they're calm, and all of a sudden they have to jump into something extremely stressful, and then take a little bit, calm down, and then it may happen, you know, again, fast or period of time. There's no set time on when it's going to happen. So you can't plan out. It just happens, and you got to react. So you got that build up all the time, and it's not necessarily harmful. It can be over time, but that stress is like action, like getting yourself into action.
Yes, the readiness.
Yeah, the readiness piece. So, and I think that's where you see some people handle it well, some people don't. Make the mental state of how you're going through it, remembering or reliving and handling that stress mentally, letting yourself get to it. It can, you know, be effective or harmful to you. So you know, whether you can stay in those positions or for long periods of times or short periods of times, depending on how you're handling it mentally.
Agreed. Sometimes I think people choose professions that their bodies just aren't cooperating with.
Yeah.
You know, so yes.
And that's
Matt,
where the evaluation piece comes in.
Yes,
and
it really
being
does.
present in the process. Like, hey, is this something that I'm dealing with, or is it harmful? Am I able to continue this and do this for longer periods of times, or am I going to have to switch up something and change my lifestyle so that way it's no longer harmful?
Yeah, I went through some of that myself, professionally, and ended up after after 10 or 11 years, I needed to make new choices for really valid reasons. And it is that evaluation piece, is what you're choosing to do with your time. Is that working for you? And it wasn't for me at a point. So are we in a place, any other comments that we could start a wrap up? Did you want to say something, Matt?
Yeah, as I'm just listening and just hearing about the word effectiveness and in when we're dealing with stress, are we effectively managing it, or do we need to take extreme ownership and change one factor to see if we can now effectively manage the stress? And I feel like
Abs-
sometimes a lot of people don't effectively manage stress because they don't try and change anything. They don't change a factor and try and if that doesn't work, okay, now you got to take a effective ownership again, try something new until something works. And that's where the snowball effect, as I say, comes in, because it just, if you don't effectively make changes properly, you're not going to effectively control your stress levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Matt, would you like to start off our wrap up tonight? Something that spoke to you tonight, and a scale of 1 to 10 for the value you received?
Between last week and this week, we're upwards of 20 now. Because it's just stress is probably the biggest thing I feel that a lot of people, especially with society now and what, social media does, what kinds of all these other things can do for people, they make it seem that it's okay that we deal with these things, but it's not. So it just really hits home that I kind of shared some of the personal sides of things for me that just kind of put some perspective on life, and realizing that, it really, some bad things happen, and yes, they're bad compared to a lot of other things, but at the same time, it's allowed me to be at home with my kids every day. It's allowed me to see them every day. I got my vision back. I got those things that, those little things are effective tools to know that, okay, everything's gonna be all right. I still got a heartbeat. I still got 2 feet I can walk on. I may not walk very fast, but that's okay. I can still get there. Slow and steady wins the race. Um, and you just got to keep reprogramming yourself at times. And then once you effectively start to manage stuff, it comes a lot easier, whether it just be stress or life events or other things. Once you start to learn to effectively have the right process, things become easier.
That's what the mind models are, is they're effective, tested, effective models to plug into processes. So that's what they're there for. They're like effective processes.
And wasn't
You
it,
can
I can't remember, but wasn't it Edison that had like how many tests on a light bulb before he finally created it?
well, some say 2,000, some say 10,000. The
Right.
most popular
So
story
he
is 10,000.
effectively kept trying to change something until it worked.
Perfect. Yep. Exactly true.
Thank
So,
you, Matt.
yeah, I appreciate you guys as always.
Yes, it's always good to see you here. Leslie, would you like to participate in the wrap up?
Of course. I found this evening wonderful. I was able to make a lot of notes, and even my note taking has improved. in writing down things that are striking me that in the conversation, that I can use to support me in growing with mind models. And interesting enough, I've gotten a lot of emails lately from a company wanting to engage me in a course of mindset. And I quickly delete those and say, you guys are crazy. I know better. So, but who owns the problem? The person who can change the problem. Situation, people, process. I've highlighted that, put a big asterisk beside it. This whole process has really worked for me tonight. Understanding the 3 types, I've actually was able to get them down tonight, which I hadn't been successful in writing them down previous, of being chronic, acute, and episodic. That puts a lot into focus in understanding stress.
Mhm.
And I think that it's going to certainly benefit me, but also in with my family and how to deal with the multitude of stresses that exist in our family community. Um, so it's exciting. It's exciting, and yes, definitely a 9. No, I'm going to scratch that out and give it a 10 tonight. Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Good to hear.
Sure.
Shannon put in the chat that it's an 8 for her tonight, so she thanks everyone for sharing. Yes, Matt?
So just thinking about this is a picture that my daughter drew. That's what no stress is. They're 3 and 4 years old. They don't think about anything else. They don't think
Yep.
about the stresses. They draw rainbows and sunshines and stickers with hearts and green grass and green trees. They don't focus on the stresses. So I kind of just made things a little bit more clear is like, why do kids have such a good heart and so much fun and all those kind of things, and they just live life like it is by the moment? It's because they don't have any stresses and they choose not to have them.
Correct.
Yep.
And they actively choose it, even though they're not thinking about making a choice. They go, I don't like that. I like this. I want to fill my head with these other things. I don't want to fill my head with that.
As funny as it
It's
is,
just-
but rainbows and unicorns.
Yep, rainbows and unicorns. That's all I need to worry about.
Okay. Brent, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Yeah. I gotta say it was great to, go through the examples of Blair and Matt, having their examples and what those look like and effectively navigating that.
Mhm.
Um, I stated before, is my back having issues with my back. It's been going on for I think better half of a decade, and it's like every few months. But I don't exactly know what caused it or what exactly is going on, but I do have a process to work through it so that way the pain goes away and I can then function physically. So it's just I notice it happens when I neglect things for a few weeks, and I know it's likely something's going to happen, and it causes it, and it does. It's like I'm not getting all worked up about it because I knew what was going on and what likely what's happening. So, but it's stressful because it's very limiting on what I can do physically. So it does make
Yep.
it stressful for about a week there. But yeah, so it focus just switches for that about 4 days or so, and then able to slowly work and then work back to getting to the normal life things that I was working on. So yeah, yeah, the just getting the process like with the mind models, everything, evaluating how things are going and working through um being in the present to change what's happening, if it's effective or ineffective, evaluating those pieces and then being able to move forward from there, but being in the present in the moment and not continuing on with the stresses that are ineffective to move forward, but also recognizing which ones are effective and what's working in those pieces to continue keep those going, if that's taking you in the direction you want to go. Yeah, I'd give it a 8 for me.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Well, Blair, one of the things that I've decided to do in your absence, I don't think you were here when sort of the group helped me get to this place, but I'm going to participate in the wrap up. So,
Perfect.
so what worked for me, I so value the transparency of people sharing, and not just sharing the history of their experiences, but the way you all grew through them. I mean, Leslie's growth story and Matt's growth story and Brent, your growth story, navigating your pain. And, Jane, I appreciate the growth stories that are coming out of the stressors, that we have a choice to make.
Mm.
Our stress, effective or not. And when our stress becomes debilitating and ineffective, we're often in a place where we just don't have the tools to cope. And part of what my models do is give us these tools to cope. And with practice, we can cope with a whole lot. So one of the things that spoke to me tonight was Blair talking about that dispassionate space where you can convey emotion without driving emotion. And I valued seeing that in Leslie's example, where he basically got into listing and working through his process. So I give it a 9 tonight, and I just want to thank everybody for their transparency. Blair, do you have any last comments, or shall I give it to
Actually,
Jane?
I'm going to jump on the bandwagon too.
Okay.
I really enjoyed tonight a lot. I like the fact that we're sort of taking it in a slightly different vein here with mind models. We're taking a life situation stress and saying, how do mind models apply?
Mhm.
And how can we use these things to help us manage, cope, problem solve, and move into some level of success in our life?
Mhm.
And that's really what it's all about, as far as I'm concerned. You know, to me tonight, I love the direction that we're going with this stuff. I think it's fun. I think it's informative. And I really appreciated Matt's comments, Leslie's, and now Brent's comments on what was going on there. Matt's, especially with all of his health challenges being huge, and Leslie with moving himself through, whether or not he recognized it or not, writing out that first email and then shifting himself into rewriting it in a more concise, direct way, but a more dispassionate view of it, but still connecting purpose and emotion, just not driving the emotion, but balanced approach. And that's huge. So like, that's just enormous for me. So with those ones there, it's like, again, a 9 for me tonight, or not again, it's 9 for me tonight. Being able to share my stories and make them relevant for other people is such a blessing. So thank you, everybody. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Well, we still have chronic stress that we haven't gone over. So we're going to, if it's all acceptable to all of you, we can pick up with chronic stress next week. And good, thank you. So lots of interesting information on the chronic end of things. Jane, would you like to give us your wrap up and then take us out?
Thank you. Yes. So, boy, I'm learning so much, and I appreciate you, Blair, going back over the situation people process, because each time you do, it becomes more clear, and I learn a little bit more, and I can build on what I learned the first time. And so, I'm still learning. It's becoming more clear. So I appreciate that. I have, as you guys can probably tell, I take a lot of notes, and I appreciate when you guys do your input. So I'm going to give tonight a 9, just because I happen to know and believe that stress is so much of what the information, what I call information overload society that we have now. We are bombarded with information from all sorts of directions, and being able to then say, I need to make time to verify if this information is correct or if that information is false. And that just adds more stress to us to be able to weed through the disinformation or the twisted information or the massaged information based on someone's positioning or trying to prove their point. So it's stress is, I think, something that everybody can gain from. We talk about kids and how they live in the moment, being in the present. That has helped me truly navigate my stress levels. And there are times when I'm finding myself outside of that, and I realize it's because I'm looking at what's next, rather than what's now. And so yeah, awesome. So thank you. And then I thank everybody for their wrap-ups, because a lot of times when you come through each of your wrap-ups, I go, oh yeah, there was that, or it reinforces something else that comes up. So I appreciate that. So everybody's participation makes a big difference. This is up on YouTube right now. It will be up on Facebook later in the week. Like, comment, do all the good things, and
Subscribe, please.
subscribe,
Definitely,
absolutely.
definitely like and
Share.
comment and share. Please share,
There's that
especially
little
with
thing
the
that says-
algorithm for YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have to share it, we have to like it, and we do need to subscribe if you haven't done so already on YouTube. Please.
we can continue the conversation in the comments section.
That's
So,
right.
welcome to do so. I know that the comments are looked at and responded to. So, again, thank you, everybody, and we will definitely hope we'll see you next week on part 3, which will be on chronic stress.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yep.
Take care, everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Yep. Bye for
Bye-bye.
now, guys.